Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You're always most welcome. Well, today, as advertised, we have ICM's latest kit from the Ukraine, and it's their 48 scale Mistel 1 guided bomb stroke drone based on a, I was going to say Dornier, but of course it's a Junkers Ju88, whereby these were developed in World War II by the Nazis, of course, but it has a Messerschmitt Bf109 G6, I think, on top. We'll get into that more in detail in a second. The idea would be that this thing has got this most bizarre looking front end, which is just a huge bomb basically, and it would be flown toward the target, then they'd separate, space shuttle like, if you like, and then it would be guided by the pilot of the 109 to the target, which is really intended to be an anti-shipping weapon. I mean, why they were, again, one of these balmy ideas that the Germans came up with at the time was, why would you waste a perfectly good Ju88 bomber that can be used again and again and again to attack shipping, just to blow it up in one suicide attack which may or may not be successful? Seems very wasteful of resources. It seems to me the sort of thing you can do when you've got, like the Americans did, have much more unlimited resources, and you want to have a sort of high-powered weapon. But if they made too many of these, you're just wasting Ju88s, aren't you? But anyway, there we go. So, kit number 48100. Quite an interesting one. I did, of course, review one of these. I'm just going to put the light on here. I did, of course, review one of these. As you can see the reflection there, can't you? Wow, that certainly makes it bright. Let's just see if we can get rid of it a bit. That's not going to work, is it? That's a bit of a problem. There we go. Revell did it, didn't they? And they did it with a much later war version of the Mistel, which was the version which had the Salamander was the fighter aircraft, a jet powered, or pulse jet I should say, powered plane with the motor on top, and that was using, was that also a Junkers 88, or was it, I'm trying to remember now, my memory's gone. No, it was an Arado jet bomber. So yes, it all comes back now. Taking it to the ultimate extreme of wastefulness, not only wasting a good bomber, but wasting a jet powered bomber with 2 jet engines, which was created with lots of precious materials and metals that they couldn't easily source and were struggling to get. Let's waste a few. Again, it's acting like they've got unlimited resources, and it's almost like a cultural thing where they didn't realise the peril that they were in late in the war. They were doing that in 1945 to destroy bridges, as I recall, in that model. How remarkable and bizarre is that? And this is where it started. So obviously they were allowed to keep on developing the concept late into the war. Anyway, this is the genesis, really, the Mistel 1. Mistel is kind of a German anachronism for, they kind of call it mistletoe, but it actually means parasite. It's a parasite piggybacking on top of one aircraft, piggybacking on top of the other. So that's where the name comes from. Anyway, without further ado, we'll now move that. We'll show you a bit, we'll read you what it says. How about that? The Mistel Strike Aircraft Complex was a high-powered guided attack aircraft. The combat component of the complex was the Ju88 bomber, which was fitted with a large warhead with an explosive material weighing between 1.8 and 2 tons, instead of having a cockpit. The aircraft thus becomes a kind of giant flying bomb. The nose of the fuselage was equipped with a long tip with a detonator to create a cumulative effect during the explosion. This is a bit like the daisy cutter bomb we talked about recently with the Sikorsky Sky Crane, where it's the same principle. They want it to detonate just a few meters back from the actual point of impact to create the biggest possible blast effect. Above the bomber was located a carrier aircraft, usually a single-seat fighter, whose pilot had control of the entire system from the moment of takeoff until the target was identified. Yeah, right, so like this fighter pilot didn't have enough to do, obviously. Then, I think that's a bit of a typo here. Then the carrier had to be separated from the Ju88 and returned to its airfield. The fighter plane, I mean. And the bomber has to hit the target in peak mode. In the summer of 1944, the Mistel 1 was used by specialist Luftwaffe units against Allied ships off the coast of France. It started doing it around D-Day, I believe. And in the spring of 45, such aircraft attack systems struck bridges and crossings to stop the advancing Red Army. This is the more advanced one with the Arado bomber modified into a drone, like you do. Anyway, this box contains an unassembled model kit. The length is 342mm with a wingspan of 421mm, height of 147, and has 251 parts. So a very sensible part count, unlike the Sikorsky Sky Crane behemoth helicopter we saw recently. Right then, well, let's get cracking. It's not been opened, it's just a oh, that's interesting. That's not been opened, but that's actually the adhesive's fair there. That's interesting. Just come from Kyiv in the Ukraine to my door as I speak. Whoops. That's it, got it. So let us have a good old look. There's also a little bit of artwork I'll show you in a second just before I physically open the box. Just taking a bit longer than here it is. They've done it a bit strangely. They've got 2 tabs of tape on one side, only one on the other. It's a bit unusual. I think it's just been done in a rush, perhaps, trying to get it to my door. And of course it's a new tool. Now it's not all new tool. I don't think the 109 element of it is new tool, but I think the Ju88 is. Anyway, on the side you can see that they've separated it out in the artwork, so you can see the 2 elements, so to speak. And we've got 3 different schemes here. They tend not to tell you which, you know, in any detail on the outer box what the different schemes represent, but they will inside. So we've got one where we've got just a plain 109, then we've got one with a yellow stripe on the tail with an M, and then we've got a C. But it's a very bizarre looking concept all round, isn't it, to be honest? But anyway, without any further ado, we will get this box open and we'll have a jolly good look at what's inside. Thank you very much to ICM once again for providing the kit for us to review. It's amazing that they can produce new products like this. This is brand new tool. It's just come out. Summer releases, and we seem to be having new releases every month from them. It's amazing that they can achieve that, and I take my hat off to them. Yeah. It's very difficult circumstances, to put it mildly. Right, usual thing, box within a box. Working with ICM, I think they saw my black gloves and they said this is the guy we need to open and do our reviews because he can get the boxes open. Oh gosh, yes, there's quite a few different bags. Right. 109 bag, I'll separate it out. I think then there's a Ju88 bag, I think, and the instructions and the paper guide. Right. Okay, let us start with the paint guide and work our way from there. Well, it's nice to have some new, exciting new kits to be released at this time of the year because it is normally a bit of a dead period. This summer holidays, you know, and my friends at ICM, our friends I should say, they're actually on holiday at the moment as well. What sort of holiday they can actually get, I'm not sure how that works, but anyway. Alright, let's have a look at what they've got. So here we've got, it's just a general leaflet again about their paints and varnishes range. It's not pertinent or specific to this particular aircraft as such. Olive dry white primer. Yeah. Offers their acrylic thinners and acrylic paint sets with their nice paint guide on the back. So put that back in the box. Then we've got our instructions. And yeah, the exact same right up here, but then it gives you this thing I do like about ICM. They give you a nice technical spec, unlike our friends in the Far East who just, you know, give you nothing. It's just plastic and the most basic diagrams, and they call it instructions. They're just diagrams really, but no, ICM do it properly. They give us the data about the airplane. Length in meters this time, 16.4 meters. This is the actual aircraft. Wingspan 20 metres, warhead weight 3.8 tonne, maximum speed 380 kilometres, what's that, 220 miles an hour, is it 225, something like that. Maximum ferry range 2,000 kilometres, so it's go a fair distance, can't it? Okay, then we have our decals, which we'll look at first I think. Now generally ICM do their own and sometimes they actually contract them out to a company in Czech Republic, I think. Whether it's the same one that Edouard used, I really don't know, but they usually are quite decent decals, so let's have a look at these. So again, being very sensible about all this, as you'd expect, these guys have created some odd shaped decals here that can be, you know, combined together obviously to make a swastika without actually producing a swastika, because that would be very politically sensitive, shall we say. I think that, you know, this is a very sensible solution to this issue. I don't understand why people like Airfix and Ravel and others can't just adopt this system. You look at it like that and it's not offensive to anybody, even if you are, you know, personally affected or your family's been affected by what happened. I think that's a very sensible, mature, grown-up way of attacking the problem, really, and getting around it without upsetting anybody. This is quite interesting, isn't it, where they've got elements of the cross. I'm not sure whether that's where we have... we'll come to that later to understand why that's separated. It's probably a flap or something, or a slat. Then we've got lots of stencils and the regular markings for the Ju88, and of course also got some for our ME109, and again that's also got these discombobulated shapes that make up a swastika, should you choose to do so. And you know, they don't show these controversial symbols on the actual artwork, which is okay, fair enough. I personally don't like any of this. I think it's revising history, and I think there's a danger. I've said it before, I know a lot of you do agree, I think most of you. There's a real danger with airbrushing history. We don't want to celebrate what these people did, certainly not, you know, but we need to know about it, and we need to recognise it, and we need to see things as they were, not gloss over them, wallpaper over the cracks, and pretend these very unpleasant things did not happen, because that is a recipe for terrible problems in the future. You know, if we avoid talking about it, if we avoid showing it and discussing it and understanding what evils have happened in history, we'll never learn from it, will we? So anyway, that's my 2 pence. I don't think that model kits should be revised to be looking different from their actual original concept. Anyway, here we go. I best apologise, sounds like somebody in the neighbourhood has got their streamer out. Right, so we've got the sprue map being created here, and yes, we've got quite a few parts that are not being used, obviously because there's different variants of the Ju88 being done. Quite a lot of parts actually there that are blanked out and not to be used, and again on the next page. And even on your ME109 there's quite a few that are not going to be used, propellers, options and things. Oh yeah, I was wrong, it's an F4. I was thinking it was a G6 would be a bit soon maybe. I think that when this came out in early 44 it was probably an F/G. So yeah, it's an F4, a bit like they used in North Africa I think. So it's like an intermediate ME109. Anyway, so you start, now this I like. Okay, now let me just say that I recently did the review on the Sikorsky the CH-54, the Sky Crane with the Daisy Cutter M121 bomb. I was a little bit critical about, not the kit, the kit was absolutely wonderful, but I was a little bit critical about the instructions. It's just that it had all these sub-assemblies and it had rotor heads and things, but it didn't tell you any of that. And I'm not the greatest expert on helicopters, if I'm honest. It's probably, of all the modelling subjects that I do, it's the one I'm probably least expert on. Probably know more about ships, to be honest. It's not saying much. Helicopters are like, you know, black magic, you know, witchcraft to me. Formula 1 cars, yeah, I can tell you what every part does pretty much, but not helicopters. So it's even all the more important with things like Formula 1 cars and helicopters, where you've got these complicated machines, to have a, you know, just a title to tell you what each component or assembly is actually is. You look at a Tamiya kit, you know, people. I was watching live broadcast recently where people were celebrating the new Airfix Sea King helicopter, and it's a nice kit, you know, no question. It's not my thing, but it's a lovely kit. But there was they started with this, you know, oh, if you don't like Airfix, you're a hater, and if you love Airfix, it's great, you know, and it's like a bit of a love-in really, and a bit of a fanboy thing, and people talk about Tamiya fanboys. They don't realise how ridiculous they sound when they say that, because it makes them sound like an Airfix fanboy. I'm not a fanboy of anything. I am very objective, and I find fault with I found 10 faults on one of the new, was it the Spitfire Mark 1 from Tamiya, which I was very surprised about. But I do love them generally. But one of the greatest things that they do is their instructions are very descriptive. You can't get away from this. That is something that I think all manufacturers should aim for. I mean, they don't go to the lengths that Wings did, but it's more than good enough, you know, and it tells you what these components are. So in a Tamiya aircraft, it will say, you know, anti-radar missile, or it'll say engine assembly. It'll tell you what each stage actually is, so you know what you're actually building. And when you've got something super complicated like that helicopter, which had all these like generators and winches and motors and sub-assemblies, confusing, especially for those of us that don't know much about helicopters. It's really important that you know, and I'd like to see ICM do a bit more of this. But in their favour, and I must point this out, a lot of you know from the helicopter review I did that I am building the TACOM Sea Dart, and that's very guilty of having no writing in it at all, really. To even tell you doesn't even tell you this is the Sea Dart, and then it carries on, and then you start building Seawolf without it even saying so. It just one page merges into the next page, and I looked at it and I thought, well, is that? And eventually I worked out that it was Seawolf, but it's not even got a divider between the two types of missile systems, which is just ridiculous, to be honest. I mean, TACOM makes some lovely stuff, but their instructions are woefully weak, I've got to say. It's one of the worst. Up there with Border, really. Anyway, I've rant over, you know. But the point I was going to make is here, look, they've actually said this is the Ju88, completely unlike TACOM that I've just complained about. So they actually say Ju88, so there you go. So at least we know what we're building, and there's a bit of clarity. I'd like to see a lot more of that from ICM, if I'm honest. A bit more, you know, fuselage, you know, bomb section, nose bomb section. Just especially on these more complicated items that are really complex cars and things like that. Anyway, so there we go. We're building up our two sides to the fuselage, and then we're going to, quite conventional to look at it, we're going to then build a tail wheel and put that in. Then we've got the bottom plate for the central section of the wing. Then we're building up this huge bomb proboscis nose that replaces the cockpit on this aircraft. And then that's going to go in here, of course, and be assembled into the fuselage. And then here we've got your ailerons, which is nice. It's got separate ailerons, and we've got a tail. It looks like it's got a separate rudder, which is fantastic. And it's all very conventional stuff. It's building up your two sections, elevators separate as well. That's very nice to see. I like that. And then you're building up your wings. You've got those very pointy sort of triangular wing tips. It almost has a Buck Rogers stroke Flash Gordon look to it, this. It reminds me of those Flash Gordon spaceships from the 1930s original Buster Crab series. Those of you of a certain age will remember that, of course. And we have got the strimmer going on. I do apologise about the strimmer, nothing I can do about it. Anyway, then we're building up our, we've got the flaps even, we've got flaps as well as elevators. That's a real joy to see that, isn't it? And then we have got the main gear being assembled here. The legs and the actuator rods are all going together. Quite a lot of work there. Actually, there's quite a lot of detail. Look at it, just a nicely detailed gear system. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. You're duplicating what you've already done. They tend to show it twice, so there's no doubt. I like that though, because it means it's really nice and clear for us to understand what's going on. So then ultimately those assemblies go into the lower wing under the engine nacelles, and then you're building up your engines. I think it's a Daimler-Benz engine, if memory serves. Daimler-Benz engines going in, bearers go on there, your exhausts. That's going to all be brought together here, and then you've got to pop those into the actual, the main bearing bulkhead, the firewall at the back, and then you've got the support hoops, the bearer hoops underneath, and then you bring that ultimately into your engine nacelles, and you pop on some cowlings as well. This is quite a nicely detailed kit, I've got to say. It's got engines in it and everything. Flaps and, you know, elevators and rudders. And that's better than a lot of people are doing at 48 scale. I hope Airfix are listening, and Revell. And then you're going to repeat that process we've just been through, and then you've got your exhaust covers going on here. And then those completed nacelles with the engines are going to go in to be dropped in underneath. And then you've got your propellers and your spinners going on. It looks to me like you've almost built it, really, just the wheels and tyres to finish off. Popping those on, plus your gear doors. And that's it for the Ju88 bomb element of the Mistel, the drone. And then, helpfully, ICM have clearly put here, again, unlike TACOM, they're clearly saying Messerschmitt Bf 109 F4. So we know we're now onto the separate aircraft. We're not just putting parts together not knowing why, which is literally what happens with the Seawolf one. And on that it's much more confusing because the parts are not particularly familiar to most of us. Anyway, here we're going for a fairly conventional build. We've got the cockpit. There's not much in the way of a seat detail, I think, but you've got the stick and the rudder pedals, and then you're building up your internal cockpit complete with the cannon, mounting casing for the nose spinner cannon, and then you're going to build up your gun sight here, and you've got instrumentation, bringing that all together here, and then you're going to do your own engine, Daimler-Benz engine for this one. Was it Daimler-Benz or was it BMW now? I'm trying to remember. Messerschmitt F4, I think it was Daimler-Benz again. And then you're bringing in the sump, and of course this is an inverted engine, so the cylinder head's at the bottom. That was very much the German way at the time. Trying to have a more aerodynamic frontal area, I think. And then basically we have got all your exhausts going in, your supercharger going in here, and then the engine bearers and exhaust stubs coming in. Again, bearers and the front. You've got basically the spinner, the drive shaft. So I should say the drive shaft coming through here for the spinner, and then that's going to be mounted into the main cockpit that you've already built. Then you've got your cannons coming in here that are going to be dropped in for the nose cannons. There's two of them, one on each side. And then we've got the engine bearers starting to appear, support brackets. And then you're on to putting that into the fuselage. Apologies again for the strimming noises, I hope that's not disturbing your pleasure too much. We've got the elevators. This time it's we've got elevators that are all moulded in, they're not actually posable on the ME109. Bringing the fuselage halves together and then putting on your cowls to cover up your engine and your guns. Then it's a very conventional build here. The lower wing going in first, upper wing again you've got fixed, looks like you've got fixed aileron, and then you've got separate wing tips. But then it looks like you've got flaps and slats, which you have. That's interesting. So they haven't gone for separate ailerons, but they have gone for flaps and slats. Okay. Putting in your rudder, which is separate. You've got your canopy, front windscreen and rear screen cover, and then you've got your two nose covers that covers up the drive shaft coming out the front. Popping in your main canopy, plus you've got a separate piece here, you can see that, separate piece of armour plated glass which goes on the top. That'll be fun to glue in, won't it? You definitely want to be very careful with that and use some PVA acrylic type glue that's not going to fog, whatever you do. Otherwise you could be in quite a bit of trouble, I think. Then we've got the intake, air intake for the engine going in here, and you've got your radiator intake from underneath. They go in here. Then you've got some slats, as I mentioned, which is quite interesting that they've actually put those in. Slats. And then we've got the main radiators, oil cooler and the main radiator cooler going in underneath. All those going together. Then you've got your slats going, sorry, flaps I should say. Flaps going in. Looks like whether you compose them I'm not sure. You probably can with a little bit of work. And then you've got your undercarriage main legs with the covers going in there. And all the undercarriage then comes together, plus your spinner and your propeller all being assembled here. And then we then have some holes need to be drilled. Now this is interesting that they've asked you to drill them at the end after you've actually completed your build on your Junkers Ju88. Find that a little bit odd. Why didn't they ask us to do that earlier? That might have been easy to do before you assembled it all. I'm not sure. Maybe not. maybe not. Could be a challenge that though. Just make sure you haven't painted. Make sure you haven't painted the kit and put all your stencils and stuff on, because it could make a mess. Just be aware. But this, of course, is for the mountings for the sort of scaffolding calipers for the ME109 to mount like a trestle almost to mount on top. And obviously there's some holes in the ME109 needed as well. And then here you get to see exactly how it works. So you mount them in. Yeah, that's going to be the trickiest part of the build, I think. It looks a little bit fiddly, does this. You better get your holes right, and you make sure that it's all very solid. And then, ICM don't provide you with a canopy mask, unfortunately. It's for the 109 in this case, of course, because there's no canopy on the Ju88. But just be a bit wary with their canopy stencil that they've drawn here. They can just be a little bit out sometimes. To be honest, I think that I would probably just buy yourself like an Edward or Montex or whoever paint mask, you know, for. I'm sure they'll do the right one. Now there was a little bit more at the back. I think it's the. Oh yeah, here we go. Just finally showing the final product, and it does look great, doesn't it? Look at that. That's going to look very imposing in your cabinet. That's nice. That's nice. And then we've got the colour call-outs. Marking option 1, and this is some Dizier, June 1944. So, I mean, I don't know whether they actually got these out in time for D-Day. I suspect they just missed the boat, literally, if you pardon the pun. Because obviously it was an anti-shipping variant, you know, that's the whole point of this. Now, I do think that it probably came out a week or two too late for being effective, and I'm sure that they were of limited effect anyway, and probably very limited numbers. And then we've got this one, it just says France 1944 for the second option. No location given. And then finally, this one is Berg, which I think is in northern Germany, autumn 1944, and this is more for around the time of the Arnhem attack, and probably being used over in the Eastern Front maybe as well. And then you've got your ME109 options in terms of the, shows all of your colour call-outs, and you've got the stencils, of course, here. Let's try and get a bit closer. There we go. Stencils, and yeah, quite nice schemes, to be honest. In that scheme, it always makes me think it's a G variant rather than F, because there was a bit of an overlap, wasn't there? And on this side, it's yeah, very similar scheme, just different markings, really. And then finally, there's one that's got these rather interesting red wingtips underneath, which looks quite attractive. And that's the one at Berg. So they're all pro rata. So you've got Dizier again, and then you've got the one that just says France. And then finally, this is the one at Berg, the Northern Germany one, I think it is. Very nice, very nice. Okay, so first impressions in terms of instructions. Thank God it's gone quiet. Sorry about the noise. It was so peaceful this morning as well when I started this. This is why I'm not drinking, as it's a morning shoot, this. So I thought to myself, oh, it'll go out in the evening, I should get a glass of wine. I thought, no. I promise you I'm not an alcoholic. But if I'd have had a glass of wine today, yes I would be, because it's too early. But it was very quiet, as I say, until the gardening started. Right, I would just say in summary for the instructions, yeah, just a bit more detail, but the thing is with an aircraft or aircrafts like these, we kind of know the aircraft fairly well. It's not like I mentioned earlier with the helicopter or the racing car where there's lots of complex components that are not clear. Most of us know most of the components in these planes. Fairly familiar, most of it will be. So what should we start with? Should we start with the 109? Let's do that. There's a lot of plastic here. I think this is retailing at around about the £50 mark, £50–55. Now I've got it in front of me, I think that's probably a good buy, because you're getting two kits really, aren't you? And there's a lot of plastic here, lots of plastic. It's quite a heavy little box. Let's have a look at it. Okay, so first of all, clear. This is the ME109 we're doing first. So clear parts, obviously that canopy. Not sure how clear that is. Let's have a look. The beauty with ICM, of course, they use these nice resealable bags that we can just seal back up. Oh, it's okay, it's okay, it was the bag. I thought there was a horrible scuff all over it. It's not, it's actually on the bag itself, not the part. There's a little bit of a scuff, so these parts are pretty nice. Fairly sharp. This is a classic case of, you know, people say, I'll say in a review, let's just zoom out. I'll be doing a review and I'll be mid-flow, and I'll be saying things like, oh, look at that, it's perfect, you know, it's flawless. And then when I'm watching it then later with you live when it's premiered, and I'll be thinking, it isn't flawless, I can see marks in it and distortion or a scratch. But you have to remember, and this is very important, one thing that makes my reviews slightly different to other people's, well, there's several things obviously, but one of the key things on a technical perspective is I do zoom in very, very close, and I do try my best to give you the best clarity I can. Remember that your eyes and mine cannot do this, and you'll never see it looking as big and as flawed. Ultimately, if you zoom in anything at all in the world, you zoom in on close enough, will look very horrible and flawed. But your eyes don't see that, and it was a bit like that with the was it the helicopter? And there was just some very minor flash, and it was so minor, but you couldn't see it with the naked eye. It was only when I saw it on the zoom and I thought, oh, there's a bit of flash there, tiny bit of flash, maybe a hint of it, just on some seams, and none of this was visible to me when I was actually showing it to the camera. Please bear that in mind. You're seeing it, you're almost seeing it with this camera, which has got a fantastic lens from Canon, and it's a 20 times optical zoom, so it's very, very high grade. You know, this is not, you know, like a lot of people's cameras that are digital zoom, they're not proper zoom. You know, all you've seen is a load of pixelation. You don't with this, you see there's no pixelating going on here. This is optical, and so you're seeing it with great, great clarity. So bear in mind that you may see flaws that your eyes simply would not ever spot. You really wouldn't. So I just wanted to say that. And it's a classic case here, because I mean, to my eyes now in front of this, I'm less than a foot away, obviously. They look absolutely perfection, and if there's any flaws or little things you might spot, thanks to my camera, just be a little bit forgiving, because I don't think you're going to see them with your naked eye. It's just not going to be a problem. Right, so those are very nice clear parts for our 109, complete with the, sorry I forgot to point out, we've got the mower going now, okay, sorry about the noise. So this is the armour plated piece of windscreen at the front, armour plating here. So that's rather nicely done. You've got the gun sight there as well. Yes, there's plenty to see. Okay. Right, now then, let's zoom back a bit and we will see the 109. Now, I've never seen one of these fighters from ICM before. Now, bear in mind, I don't know if there's actually a date on this, but I can tell you that this is the part of the kit that's not new to them. The JU is, quite a lot of the JU is anyway. This isn't. This is quite an old tooling, and you can see flash. Now, this time, just going back to what I've just been saying, now I can see some flash with the naked eye, and you'll see it more on this lens for sure. On the propeller, for example, you can see some here and here. So, and it's kind of got that older plastic feel to it. Definitely an earlier kit. Again, you can see little bits of flash. I mean, the actual, the moulding and the detail is beautiful. Can't see any faults with that at all. Just a little bit unclean, perhaps, on the tool, leading to, you know, a little bit of. It's quite a soft plastic. This feels like it feels a bit rubbery compared to their normal modern plastic. And you can see it flexing around. Look at this. Well, that mower's noisy, isn't it? I do apologise. It'll be gone in a minute. It won't take long. But yeah, we've got some flash. You can see it again on that rudder if you look carefully. Yeah, we can see some. Again, you're going to have to do a bit of clean-up on this. It's not bad. It's just a little bit old school, isn't it? And then on the wings. Again, this is actually better, I'd say. It's cleaner looking. It's not as troubled in its in its tooling, and it's quite nicely detailed. You know, it's not clearly not a brand new tool. It hasn't quite got that finesse that we saw from ICM with that Sky Crane, for example. That was beautifully tooled. It was so sharp, and they created all these like small parts, much smaller than you're seeing here, and it was flawless. There was no flash. So you've just got to bear in mind it's horses for courses. This is probably tooled 25 years ago, and that was tooled more like 25, not even months ago, 25 weeks ago probably. Yeah, sorry about the noise. I'm sure he's nearly finished. He'll be gone in a second. The garden he's doing next door is not a very big garden. It won't take him long. So yeah, you can see the difference, can't you? If you compare some of these parts in terms of cleanliness, flash-wise, and also the sort of sharpness and the depth of the moulding. Things like the cannon at the end of the nose, you can clearly see that that's not been hollowed out. It's just like it's not a female type of orifice, or it's just blanked off sort of thing. So that's again a sign of its age. Its supercharger here, not massively detailed, is it? Not a criticism as such, but it probably will just hurt, maybe just hurt my rating on this kit, just a fraction at the end, because you've got to take that into account. What they've done here is combine an old tool with some new tool, and that always causes this kind of a scenario. Of course, it's nothing new. It doesn't actually have a date, and it just says ICM. They do tend not to put dates on, which I don't blame them for, because it gives them the ability to do this mixing and matching. In fact, I'm surprised sometimes that people like Airfix always put dates on. Not a criticism. I'm glad they do actually, but I can see it works against them over time. Especially, I mean, I'm saying that, I'm not criticising Airfix at all there, because I should say they are very good at this. They actually declare it as, you know, they'll reissue an old kit and say Airfix Classic, and you know that you know what you're getting when you're getting an old kit. People's expectation is managed. Other manufacturers, and I'm thinking of Revell in particular, look at our new kit, the new GR1 Harrier in 32nd scale, and I was like, oh wow, I've got to have it. And then something just bit me in the ear. I was at Telford actually about 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was just around the time just before COVID struck, and I was just about to buy this anniversary of the Harrier 50th anniversary 32nd scale GR1. And I thought, something in the back of my mind. And I actually got the phone out and I went on ScaleMates to check. Sure enough, of course, it was an ancient kit and a really horrid one. And I just literally back away, walk away, run. Run for your life. But you know what I mean? It's a little bit, I'm making a joke of it, but it's not actually that funny. I think this is wrong. Not talking about the kit here now, I'm talking about this policy that Revell have, where they, same with they've got the old Matchbox moulds, and they're issuing those as your first diorama with a load of new artwork, making youngsters think that they've got a new, all singing, all dancing kit, and it's actually tooled in 1972. That's a bit naughty, Now ICM are not doing that, so let's just be clear. And as I said, Airfix are not either, so if it's fine to release old stuff, re-release it, just tell us and communicate. Don't mislead people deliberately with falsehoods, or trying to be less than economical with the truth and make modelers and buyers, especially when it's youngsters that are buying some of this stuff, especially with the case of the Matchbox armour. Those youngsters won't know. They won't know what it is. They won't be like me or you that are more expert at it. I mean, the only good thing to say about that, of course, is at least the Matchbox moulds were very good, and they will get a decent kit they can make. But obviously they apply that policy, and the perfect example was the Harrier that I gave, because that's not a good mould, and it's not going to go together well. It's horrible. Anyway, where should we begin here? Because we've got the Ju88. I've gone off at a tangent. I'm sorry about that. ICM will be thinking, what's he on about? Get back to the day job. Even though they're not paying me. Okay. Let's start with this then. So this is a modification of a new tool last couple of years, I think, and then we've got brand new parts as well, making it 100% new moulds included. But look at this. Now you can instantly see the quality leap that we've got here. So we've got the wings for the Ju88 here. Look at this. Now then, I feel like I'm in the middle of a sports field, like a football stadium that's having its grass mown or something. Right, you can see there's beautiful. Suddenly the finesse is back, and you can see there's no flash everywhere like there was in those other parts of the old the ME109. Here we've got a very modern tooling indeed, and you can see it's much more subtle. The panel lines are subtle. We've got all the little flaps, and we've got the riveting, basically flush rivets, and you don't feel any riveting on this. There's no raised rivets at all. So it's very smooth and quite a sophisticated. In fact, this reminds me a little bit of the recent review I did for Clearprop, another Ukrainian company, with MiG-23. This was a bit like this. It's a very fine, smooth surface. Plastic is disproportionately smooth, smoother than it looks in the images, I'd say. It feels very smooth, but beautifully moulded. So that's the wings. Then we have, oops, the daisies. There we go. Then we have got the engine nacelles, and these are nicely moulded. Look at these. Some really good detail here. Again, they've got this quite a smooth surface, but lots of recessed panels and hatches. Same on the other side here. Then we've got our rudder there, and that's got really nice detailing in the hinges and things. Again, all recessed panels. We've got our propeller, and unlike on the other part of the kit, it's not got flash all over it. Very clean indeed. Maybe just a tiny bit there. Maybe just a tiny bit. Can you see it? Just on the top. Let's get a bit closer. Just on the top, sort of at 1 o'clock as you're looking at the tip of the propeller. But it's pretty clean. It's pretty clean. The other side doesn't seem to be suffering from the same problem at all. The other prop, look at this one, that looks fine. That looks okay, doesn't it? And you got your spinners, very nicely moulded. That's a nice sprue, that. No problem with that one at all. Then, whoops, sorry, I've just knocked the Portuguese flag over. Ah, desculpe, my Portuguese friends, apologies. Then we've got a sprue with our engine on it, and this is nice, this is detailed, look at that. Now we're talking our Daimler-Benz engine. We've also got one of the bombs, which I don't think is used in this variant, of course. This will be one of the ones that you will delete, but nice bombs anyway. And there are quite a lot of parts that are not included to be used in this particular version. And you can see there you've got the cylinder heads, the V bank of the cylinder heads. Then we've got our engine bearers, and yeah, we have got a fuel injection system by the look of it. We've got some supercharging going on here, and this is, look how finessed and fine this moulding is. Much better than it was on those other sprues we just saw on the 109. Well, that's lovely. Now there's several of that particular sprue. I think there's 1, 2, 2. Then we've got this similar size, medium sized sprue here with all the small parts. And again, look at the incredible detail here. This isn't more like this, the Sky Crane helicopter with lots of incredibly fine trunking and connecting tubes, handrails, very, very fine pieces indeed. And I mean, look at that gear leg, that's a wonderful little bit of moulding, look at that. Aren't those nice? That's really, really detailed. There we go, you got the, then you got your flaps. There's a little bit of flash on the inside there. Oh no, it's not, sorry. I thought it was flash, it's actually, no it's not, it's the mounting point for the engine nacelle, beg your pardon. My mistake, see it there. Oh, I do wish this mower would clear off, he's making a right din, isn't he? He's really getting on my nerves. Anyway, then we've got the seats for the cockpit, and that's nice. And then over on this side we've got again lots of incredibly fine parts, lots of actuator legs and arms for the undercarriage, and bits of the cockpit controls. Just look how fine some of these are. Some really tiny pieces, and not being afflicted by the flash that we saw on the other one. Then we have got a really big sprue. Now this time we've got, okay, it's getting a bit confusing. Now we have another sprue with nacelles on it. And just off the top of my head I can't tell you which one is the one you use. Doesn't really matter, we want to have a good look at it anyway. Always good for the spares box this, isn't it? Look at your main gear here. I mean those are nicely moulded, those wheels and tyres, aren't they? You've got your tail wheel and tyre there, that's beautiful, look at that! Much more beautiful than the noise in the background. I'm sorry again, apologies for the noise. It will be gone shortly, I'm sure. That is beautiful moulding. I mean, look at it. Just trying to get to a look at that. Isn't that nice? Impressive. As Darth Vader said, impressive. Most impressive. And then you've got all these little bits of slats and things and internal parts of the cockpit. You've got the gear bay doors, main gear, and then we've got all this basically your tailplanes, and then you've got your rudders and your elevators, etc. Cockpit floor there. Very nice, very nice indeed. And then I think this is the last of the grey sprues actually, so I'll come back a bit here. Then we've got all the big bits. So we've got the fuselage, coming nice and close here for you. Yes, that's nicely done, and again very finessed surface, recessed panel lines, very smooth. Seems a real quality design of aircraft, doesn't it? Not like some of our British aircraft at the time that were all rivets everywhere, you know. I mean, look at the underneath. This is this central section that you put in as the mounting for the wings, and you've got grills there, and there's grills and lights and vents, all sorts of things. That's very impressive. Yeah. And then we've got part of the cockpit floor with all the radio gear, etc. Sorry, so the bulkhead I should say. Like the firewall bulkhead with all the radio equipment, which is also very nice. Thank goodness he switched that damn mower off. Getting annoyed now. I've had enough of it. I'm sure you have too. I must apologise. But there we go. So you've got these radio aerials, antennas underneath, quite typical on the Ju88. Yes, we like it. We like it a lot. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this Ju88. It's a really nice modern ICM tooling, top quality stuff. You know. Okay, so I will just remove those for a second, and I'll bring you the remaining parts we haven't yet seen. Oh yes, we've got this very small sprue which has got the guns on it, which I think most of these parts are not actually used in this particular variant, but it's got the onboard machine guns, which you can see. It looks like an MG34, I think, is it? Or is it an MG42? I forget. Then you've got the flash eliminators on the exhausts there, and another couple of machine guns there. And I will now, if you'll bear with me, I shall just pop those away for a second. Now we've got peace and quiet has returned. He picks his moment, doesn't he? It's actually not a neighbour as such, it's a contractor that comes. And unfortunately I was already midway through the review, wasn't I? If it's at the start, you tend to stop and reshoot, but you can't keep doing that. You know, you get near the end and it's it's like, how bad is too bad? It's always difficult. At least we haven't got lots of noises from pigeons and other things going on, or rain and lightning and thunder. We've had all of that recently. It's been absolutely nightmarish, really. All sorts of very strange weather we're having. But it's not as strange as what they're having in southern Europe, is it? There's really terrible heat waves which have been quite unpleasant actually, it's dangerous. People have lost their lives even. Not good. And animals as well. A bit too much sun for me. Sorry about all the noise. There we go. Right, yeah, final two. Let's have a look at the clear parts, and we'll finish off with the bomb. So, clear parts. Oh, silence is golden, isn't it? I feel like I was really competing with that then. Luckily the microphone does face forward, so it reduces it a little bit. So, we've got our Junkers. Now again, it's going to have parts on here that you know, maybe the guns, I'm not sure whether we have to fill in the gun holes or not. So let me just check back on that. Let's just have a look if it's mentioned, because I say that, of course, because you know, there's no reason to have any excess weight on this. You know, guns will not be included in the aircraft, the real thing. They'll strip them all out. So I just wonder what the instructions said about that. Whether it just glossed over it, you know. Well, of course. What a silly chap I'm being. I've just realised that this old sprue is completely superfluous. It's actually not needed at all, because there is no glasswork on this aircraft. We'll have a look at it anyway. I just realised there's no glasswork. That's it. There is no glass at all. So this entire sprue is spare. Never a bad thing though. You know, if you get a Ju88 model from somewhere else, let's have a look at this fairly up-to-date tooling anyway. See what we think of these clear parts, because it's always fascinating to see. Okay. Now then. Again, this is a classic example where you're going to see more. As I speak, you're going to see more than I am. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm just looking at some slight, I don't know if you're going to get this, some slight distortions there. Can you see around where the gun port is? But hey, you know, you're moulding a hole in a piece of clear plastic. It's never going to be easy to do that. I think that those look really, really beautiful. The only one that concerns me is over here actually. Can you see there's a little distortion just there? Just near that frame. Don't know if that's coming out on camera very well. It's quite a noticeable distortion there. And it's not really present on the opposite side, interestingly. Not as bad. But I'm being picky. I'm being very picky. It's not easy to mould complex curves. You've got three challenges, haven't you here? Three major challenges. So you have got highly complex curves, you've got clear styrene, and you've got holes in the clear styrene. A lot of people struggle, you know, manufacturers that really struggle to do this, and I think that is absolutely gorgeous, really. When you consider the technical challenges involved, that is probably as good as you're going to see. Would Tamiya do it better? I'm not sure they would. I'm not sure they'd be able to be honest. Would Wingnut Wings even? Or Kotare, I'm not sure they would. Kotare's clear parts were nice, but on their Spitfire Mark 1 review that I did, yeah, the Spitfire canopy was nice, but it was nothing exceptional. You know, there were flaws in it, minor, I'm not having a go at them here, but it wasn't absolutely perfect. You know, it wasn't flawless. So it's not easy to mould clear parts, and especially when you've got these complex shapes. Spitfire canopy is a case in point, isn't it? But you've got complex shapes and you've got holes in it for guns and things. I mean, that's not pertinent, because in this kit you don't use that, you use this, which is the replacement canopy with the great big bomb frontage on it. Oh, he's off again. Now he's using his blower to clear up the mess he's made. Right, so let's have a look at this final one. We seem to have been here a long time reviewing this kit. So these are the unique, these are also brand new tool parts, and you've got this assembly that's the sort of trestling stroke supports which hold the ME109 on the top. It comes with alternative wheels and alternative bay door covers. Interesting. I like the way they've moulded it. There's a touch of the slide moulding going on here. Can you see that? This is the sprue here. That's the part. Obviously, this is sprue. Where my thumb is. That's been really nicely done. That's a quantum leap forward on the ME109 parts, isn't it? So those are all your supports. I mean, it looks very fragile to me, doesn't it? Don't you think? It's, if you think about the space shuttle and how it mounts onto the booster, sorry, the tank that then has boosters mounted onto it. But the space shuttle was, I always thought, looked very flimsy at the front where it has just that V bracket. But at the back it was really, you know, properly engineered. This looks very flimsy affair indeed. I mean, I suppose that if anything goes wrong, the pilot just pulls away and doesn't worry about it, you know. But here we have the alternative. Oh yes, this is the alternative base for the lower wing, and the other one, if you remember, had part of the lower canopy, a glass house in it, and a hole, like an oval hole. This doesn't have that, so that's why it's an alternative. And you can clearly see again some really nice. This is the latest tooling from ICM, brand new 2023 tool, and you can see the quality and the standards here are as good as anybody in the market. And here is your proboscis bomb nose. Now, do you know what that reminds me of now? I said it reminded me of a lot of the 1930s black and white, show my age, 1930s black and white Buster Crab, Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers. But do you know what it actually reminds me of now? I bet you'll see it. It reminds me of the Liberator ship from Blake 7, the late 70s, early 80s science fiction series, and the Liberator starship. The frontage of that was very similar in shape, wasn't it? Anyway, I'm digressing. Let's get back to the Mistel. But it's beautifully done, isn't it? Look at the detail they've got on the side. Where you've got like strengthening plates here that seem to hold it on. I presume that these are release mechanisms. You can unclasp it, like latches. I think they unlatch. I think they go around, unlatch it, and then remove the bomb as almost like a separate component. But it's very impressive, and obviously there's one or two of these little latch pieces at the side. It's a very interesting kit. It's literally, the slight difficulty I'm going to have here is it is literally a kit of two halves, isn't it? Because you've got old tool and new tool together. I mean, it's a bit like the helicopter in one respect, in that the new tooling is perfect. Perfect. Flawless. Flawless. Not quite so much on the ME109 element of it, which is called old tool, and you can see that. So, to conclude then, now we've got some peace and quiet, and you can hear me speak and I can hear myself think. Oops, my bag's come open. Cross. All done. Getting ICM boxes back together again. If you thought it was a chance to open them, why don't you try and put them back together? Ah, see what I mean? It doesn't want to do it, does it? That's a bit too awkward then. Just stay. It'll stay when I put this on. There we go. Again, lovely packaging. I like the way they do their boxes. Actually, I'm not criticising it. I think it's great. And it stands the test of time and gets transported internationally as this did. So where am I then? Well, of course, the elephant in the room, the obvious one, is that this is an older kit and this is a new kit. I think because of that it's obviously going to get marked down a little bit. I think it's going to probably be, in fairness, I think I'm going to say 9 out of 10. Because overall you can clean this up and you can make it work, and it's got good detail, it's got an engine and everything, you know. It's got machine guns, cannons and everything. Just, you need to do a little bit of extra work to clean it up, drill a hole in the nose for the cannon, and just a little bit of housekeeping around this, whereas this is bang up to date, latest technology. So I think that's where I'm at. I think 9 out of 10 is a fair score. I hope you agree and will give me 10 out of 10, if you wouldn't mind. Give us a like, in other words. But I hope you found that interesting. It's nice that this company has been able to produce such a good product in difficult circumstances, and another new release. You know, they seem to have kept them coming all year long where others, you know, I'm not naming any names, but others make excuses about why they can't do this and they can't do that. Really? Really? Come on, these guys can do it. You've got Models Fit, you've got ClearProp and Mini Art. And these companies are in very difficult conditions at the moment and a very frightening situation. And they are doing a superb job, you know, and I think it's going to do their reputation great strengthening of it, and really help them to build their presence globally. And I love that kit, you know. Yeah, I can see there'll be some challenges to what I know, but it's not. I don't think it's going to go together badly. I think it just needs a bit of cleaning up, that's all. So there we go, 9 out of 10 from me. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, found it interesting. There'll be more coming soon. In the not too distant future, we have a beautiful looking Marauder, B26 Marauder coming from ICM, brand new tool. That's the one I'm looking forward to. In my head, I'm already wondering about what my favourite kits of the year are going to be. That helicopter with the bomb, daisy cutter bomb, is one of them for sure. And I think that Marauder might be one as well. And we have got 3 or 4 other big releases from other people coming as well. So I don't, just to be clear about this, so people don't misunderstand, I'm not exclusively doing ICM kit reviews, but I am doing it for them. But I'm completely, nothing's changed. I still will be doing Airfix and Tamiya and Zokimura and all sorts of stuff. But it's just very nice that ICM chose me to sort of be the guy that does their reviews online for them. So I really appreciate that very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned, folks, because as I mentioned, there'll be some good stuff coming in the very near future. Thank you very much for watching. Please take care of yourselves until next time. And for now, thanks a lot. Take care of yourself. Bye for now.